Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Here I'm going to be presenting an idea I had for an awesome update which is going to give us a lot more cool things to do underwater. As you know, I love going underwater. I have a lot of underwater vessels and support vessels for the submarines and stuff. But before I do that, I just want to tell you the ground rules. As always, of course, there's a lot of things the developers can do, maybe should do, but we're not going to focus on that here, so please bear with me and don't just spam the comments with they should do this, that. Of course, they know, they're aware of the bugs. Here, I'm just presenting an idea of one of the update potentials because I just love being creative and coming up with stuff like this. So, underwater wrecks. They told us that they are not going to add new underwater wrecks because I specifically asked in the latest Q&A session, I asked them if they're going to add more underwater wrecks as kind of a probing question. And they ultimately said no, but they would like to see more things done with the wrecks that we have. So I couldn't agree more. We do have some fantastic wrecks. A lot of detail went into some of them, and there are a good amount. And even when we don't have wrecks specifically, we get really cool islands such as this that have wrecks that have specific characteristics, sometimes ruins, sometimes they have, like this example here has a little pond in the middle of the island. So I think what better way than to just utilize the things that we have and give us a little bit more of a reason to explore and go to these places. Of course, we also have really neat places like the underwater caves, which was a great update that gave us a little bit more places to explore in the underwater world. So there are a good amount, and maybe adding some would be beneficial to the game, and I'm going to get into that in a bit. But originally, my idea was quite simple. I was just hoping that the developers would give us more interactive shipwrecks, or have the shipwrecks we have be a little bit more interactive, in a sense that you get there and you have a reason to explore. You go down and maybe you can find things to salvage. So you can go and recover treasures. Now, I'm aware that we currently have the little like money things that you could collect them. Kind of like these that you can get to as you are exploring the shipwrecks. I love them. I mean, personally, I would like to see a little bit more of them, and maybe they don't have to look like treasure chests, but kind of be just an assortment of things that you can find as you are exploring them. But it would also be really neat, for example, that you actually had to recover those so that you don't instantly just pick it up and get 7,000 as I just did now, but rather you have to take it up to your vessel, whether it's by hand or by a crane or ROV, bring it up to your vessel and take it to a base. So it's partially an exploration and recovery mission, and partially call it like a transportation and logistics style mission where you take it to someplace. So that was my original thought, and it would be sort of a combination of going and getting the treasure or artifact and taking it to another location. So it kind of mixes the two, and that's kind of the simplest one to look at. But if you recall, I had a build contest where I asked people to develop shipwrecks, and I actually had an idea with Sheppy 5 to develop an add-on, and it still may happen. Nothing's off the table, but it is a little bit on the back burner. As always, the developers are free, if they decide they like this, to use any one part of it. Of course, the idea comes with a couple of different stages or steps, and there are more simplistic ways to adapt it and more complex ways to adapt it. For example, it can be as simple as having extra steps in the artifact collection process, and it could be as complicated as having a whole mission select process. So I'm going to go through the more complex one, and then we'll kind of dumb it down as we go to the lesser complex ones, which will probably be easier to implement. The first thing that I would like to see is that the research bases or research stations are put on the map, literally. Right now, they're not even on the map, but we have beautiful areas in the map already that serve as research stations or research bases. So as you can see here, this one even has a helipad. It has a nice little building over here, and when you make your way to the building, it is a research facility. Now we also have one or two of them in the Arctic as well. I know we have the one on a certain island that I talked about, but take a look at this. So right now it's just a cool piece of lore that you could kind of come and explore. But what I would love to see is that this location and locations like it around the map serve as a hub for the research style of missions. So you come here and there's a display similar to the fish display that we have in certain fish spots. I believe we have the fishing village that has the ability to purchase fishing information. Well, yeah, the fish data. I would love to see here sort of like a mission vendor, if you will, that gives you the ability to select missions. So there's a display, you can select missions, and each one of these bases comes with some other parts that we're going to get to in a second. But what I basically had in mind is you'd select a mission that would tell you to go to a certain location for a certain task. So then you'd come to the various locations of the map. First things first, you'd be able to find artifacts. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, except these artifacts could be picked up by hand or with an artifact grabber, or maybe the Magalls, if it's possible that the Magalls can work with this. So it'd be a new piece of inventory or a new piece of item that can be interactable and you can pick it up. However, unlike the treasure chests, you actually have to pick it up, bring it on board your vessel, and either put it inside a, call it, analysis container, or take it, deliver it to the research base. So it adds kind of the aspect of just bringing it up to your ship or taking it to a place. Now we have a lot of missions that, you know, take this there, take this here, deliver this there. So maybe we don't want to do too much of just back and forth transportation. So for that reason, I do have some ideas as well. But first, let me get into the first bit. So we have collection tools. We'd get new items, collection tools. One of them, for example, would be a magnetometer, and you could drag it in a towfish behind your ship, and in essence, if there is a shipwreck nearby or some type of metal, it will register a number value. Alternatively, if there are blocks below, it'll also register a number value. So I'm not quite sure the programming there, but imagine it would face one directional, so it obviously wouldn't register your own vessel, and then the developers would have to code the wrecks to kind of be considered to have some metal, and anytime you have a block to be considered to have metal. So you'd be able to find shipwrecks from you or other players, or you'd be able to find the pre-made shipwrecks under the water. So that'd be a magnetometer block. That's one idea. Place on a hull, place on a towfish. A metal detector by hand tool. So say you go down to a shipwreck or a site like this, you can now pull out your metal detector hand tool and look for small artifacts. And how this would happen is, as you're scanning the ground surface, an artifact would in essence appear. I know you can't dig through the sand is just a hard element here in the game, but say you're here and you're, you know, scanning the area, and all of a sudden an artifact would appear and then you could take it. So it's not like you have to come across finding them. They could also appear through some searching. Now how often, you know, you can't find one every 2 feet, but you could do some kind of programming to find it every so often, or have, you know, a couple per site. So you do have to do a little bit more searching, maybe set up underwater spotlights or some kind of grid pattern, flags, whatnot, to help in searching for the underwater artifacts that are lost beneath the sand. Then there's other couple tools. Underwater camera tool, a little bit different than what we have on our vessel. The vessel has the video camera, but I'm talking about almost a hand camera that we can go and snap photos of. Now, we'll never see these photos again, but in essence, the game will know when you've snapped a photo of a shipwreck or a site, and then you can upload it. And same thing, you can apply this to an ROV or a towfish or something. And again, programming, I'm not too sure, but you'd in essence have to take a photo of the shipwreck and then upload it, or otherwise send it somehow via a device to the base. Then there's sample collectors, so taking water samples like little vials, or taking samples of coral reefs or other things underwater. So in essence, a hand inventory tool, or something we can mount to an ROV, and then we bring it up and we could just pick up, you know, here it'll just say water sample, or coral reef sample, or a sample of the vegetation, or a sample of the dirt or something, and then we can take it in and analyze it. We'll get to the analyzing bit in a second. The last one is an artifact grabber, like I mentioned. If the magall doesn't work, then a grabber tool that can pick it up. And last but not least, a sonar mapper. So I know we have sonar, and maybe we're getting too hypothetical now. Obviously, the sonar is used with our Lua displays, but is there a way to program in this with a shipwreck such that the game actually registers when this has hit the shipwreck? I'm not sure, but if there is a way to do this, then what I could almost see happening is like a waypoint style of mission, like go here, then go here, then go here, and you'd literally just map out an area using your sonar to pretty much get money. You will scan it, and that's part of your research mission. Now, a bit tedious going back and forth and whatnot, but I could see it also leading to developing of AUVs, automatic remote vehicles, and things like that that have grid patterns that you could set, and they kind of go on their course and do the mapping itself. So those are the collection tools. Then you'd get a series of instrumentation devices such that you can analyze your samples. So you'd get a video uplink instrument, you'd get a sample analysis instrument, you'd get an artifact analyzing machine, potentially even a fish analyzing machine. So you can place a fish into it, you literally pick it up, place it in a fish analyzing, and then it'll tell you the lab results of your fish. So the purpose of this would give you a two-part mission to anything you do underwater. Underwater, you collect the sample, you come aboard your ship, and then you analyze that sample. Now, there could be a third part being, now you got to take your sample to the research base, or you could upload it to a machine. So now I have something a little bit more complex where I kind of thought about having upload devices. So I'm not sure if this would be a coded program that you could use, like place in your ship an actual display or laptop that already comes pre-made without you having to code it, but rather you sit on this chair and go to this monitor, and you can actually interact with it and say, okay, upload, my fish analysis data to the base, or upload my artifact analysis or sample analysis. And you'd have to place a satellite or satellite uplink on your vessel, and obviously it'd be linked via composite to this data upload console, and that's how you'd get paid. So you'd place your artifact in here, go here, and uplink, boom, uplink done, and then either this thing disappears, or you still take it back to the base for even more money. So the first part money you'd get by just uploading it, and then you would be able to take it. Now, if you don't want to take it, I would also suggest a small sample storage locker, which is again a pre-made inventory object where you can just put in your samples for storage, A, or for B, they just disappear. So I'm not quite sure if people would want to deliver these samples across the map. Maybe you collect 10 of them, uplink them, and then deliver them. Or maybe you just place it in this so-called storage locker. For realism, they just kind of disappear, but obviously the lore would be that they stay stored for you to take to the place later. So the way I see it is all of these sort of instrumentation devices would be pre-made devices compatible with each one of the type of things. So if you have an artifact machine, you can put an artifact in it. If you have a microscope, you could put a sample under it. If you have a data screen, you can put video or photo uploads into it. And if you have a fish tank or fish analysis, then you could put a fish into it. So they give you sort of a different, each tool works with something else, and they all link up to this data upload console to send the data magically to the base. Or like I said, you physically take it, transport it to the base. But in either case, you end up with a way to kind of transfer that data, and you have to get it on your ship. So it has to be on board your ship, not just somewhere arbitrarily that you pick it up. Now, there's a lot of different types of missions that this could stem from. Of course, the sonar map waypoint like I mentioned, but also exploring a cave through waypoint, or exploring a shipwreck through waypoints, deploying weather buoys, picking them up from the research base, dropping them off in certain areas. You can have research collection missions, so go take a sample of the sediment, go take a sample of the coral, grab a fish from a certain location, like go to this part of the map, grab a fish, go to this area here, grab a soil sample, and then you bring it up aboard your ship for research. So there's a lot of different ways to tie in this and kind of make it such that it applies. There's more too. You can have salvaging small artifacts like I said, but also salvaging large things, and you have to use a crane ROV to lift up a large thing like a boat or ship or plane or car and take it to a base. So that is, I know we have missions like that already, but it would almost expand on that in a sense that you'd be able to salvage items and take them to one common salvage yard, for example, for research purposes. And then we have the removing of hazardous materials. There's, a shipwreck with a hose connection point, and you have to come with a ship that actually has a hose connector port and a pump to pump out gas, pump out fuel, remove ammo, live ammo from a ship, defuse a mine, clean up the water, that type of stuff. And then of course we have on the surface salvage too. You could come across a floating hulk or a shipwreck or a piece of debris that you have to lift up with a crane, place on your deck, and take to some place. So those kind of tie in with this. I know we have some of these missions already, so take what I've said with a grain of salt, but just consider that I'm trying to point out that a global overhaul of the C-type research missions, not the search and rescue. Of course, search and rescue can stay as they are. The only effect that this update would have on them is you'd be able to sample the water to see if it's contaminated before you dive in, and potentially get your character, contaminated and then having to be cleaned off. But in the case of an emergency, you probably don't have the time to, sample the water, go up to the research lab, come back down. So in that case, you kind of have to play by ear. But now that we have the new pollution in the water, whether it's an oil spill that causes you harm or other type of, nuclear reactor spill, you have radioactive water, that's no good. Stuff like that. So it really makes you think a little bit extra. Anyway, let me know what you think of this idea. Of course, I am quite biased because, of course, with OMA, I think this would be a perfect fit, and that's why Sheppy5 and myself and Bison and some of the other guys on my Discord server were talking about actually making this into an add-on, just because it would tie in so well with sort of the environment that I've created with my creations. But I do think there is some merit to be said whether or not maybe the developers just implement the simple metal detector and you can go and collect artifacts, or just scatter some more things around the map that require a bit more digging into. Or if they want to go sort of simple, it could also be just picking up an artifact and taking it to a certain place, kind of like how we take the gold ore to a gold refinery. Well, you take an artifact to a museum or a research center and get paid. So maybe you have a large collection of artifacts before you take them to the certain place, but I think that'd also be quite cool. Anyway, enough talking. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Huge shout out to all of my supporters. Thank you so much. You guys really mean a lot to me, and keep the lights on as I push through this content, metaphorically speaking, of course, but it just gives me the extra motivation. So I really do thank you guys, and I want to thank each and every one of you for watching, commenting, participating, being part of the community, all that good stuff. Until next time, happy Stormworksing, everyone.